Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a pretty big Friday night slate here. We are going to talk about the Nets and Hawks here, facing off in Atlanta. Make sure you do check out Nate's great article up on playpicks.com with some of those best bets and player props, and like and subscribe to that page, as we've got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video with a gift card opportunity in there. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Nets open at +1. It's fluctuated up to +2, now +1.5. And the total's slowly rising from 225 to about 227 at the moment. Money line is exactly even for the Nets on the road right now. And just looking at the other games on Friday, we got Kings +1 at Hornets. We got Mavs +2 at Pacers. The Knicks are +1.5 at the Raptors. Low total of 207. We break that one down in a separate video, tell you why we like the over. Bucks -8 at the Rockets, who are still on a win streak. Lakers -5 at the Thunder, trying to finally beat a bad team. Is LA. Cavs -1 at Wolves. We got Pistons +6 at Pelicans, and the Celtics are +5 at the Suns. So Brooklyn and Atlanta, my favorite stat here. I mean, you got lots of home road splits, lots of stuff to throw out here. My favorite stat is that KD sat last night, and that tips the Nets' hand that they think this game is important. They have thought the Hawks have been on their radar since I think they dropped 142 on them 4 meetings ago. They've won 3 of the last 4 against Atlanta in the regular season. The exception being a New Year's Day loss with no James Harden, where Kyrie Irving was assuredly still tripping on mescaline or something. So it's not necessarily a reflection of how this team plays. And KD in the 3 wins has just been unstoppable for Atlanta, which is almost always without DeAndre Hunter, has no real wing defender to deal with him. I mean, nobody does, but shooting 54%, has 97 points in those wins. And then you look at his splits when he gets an extra day of rest. So on 2 to 3 days of rest last year, 119 offensive rating, a usage rate over 33%, getting his typical 27, 28 points per game. And he was a +20 plus minus in those games. The reason he got rest is because he'd been playing 40 minutes per game over his last 5, averaging nearly 30 points per game. So honestly, and this is not the player props video, but you got to love KD at 27.5 points at even money here, whether you think the Hawks are going to win or lose this game. And if you think the Nets are going to win, KD to get 35 in a win is +830 at FanDuel. For some reason, they're not offering the lower odds for maybe just 30 points in a win, because I guess that's too much of a given that the Nets need 30 points from KD to win this type of game. But I think they can win. I mean, the trend has certainly followed that Atlanta has not been able to step up against the elites this year, now that they're, on everybody's radar, and that Brooklyn has handled everybody but the elites, basically, basically taking the L at Houston last night, resting KD and LaMarcus Aldridge. But after a loss, they're 7-0 straight up this year. They're 9-3 straight up on the road. They don't cover big spreads, but they're underdogs here. So I would just go money line Nets and not necessarily mess with the total. Although if it's going up to 230, I think you got to like the under there as well.
Yeah, I kind of like the under. I'm a bit scared of taking too many player props in this one, to be honest. That might seem silly, but I mean, you look at what Brooklyn does on defense on the road. And yes, I said what Brooklyn does on defense on the road. I mean, they're actually the number 7 overall defensive rating this year. This is not the same team as last year. And in terms of on the road, it's that 3-point defense that you go, number 1 3-point defense in the league, keeping their opponents to under 30 30% from three when they're on the road. And in their last three, number one D over anywhere they're playing 28% on the road in terms of their opponent 3-point percentage. So, the Hawks, they're in middle of the pack in terms of percentage of the points that they score there. But they're still scoring. They're still relying on, the best 3-point percentage in the NBA right now to get a ton of their points, right? Shooting about 40% from three. And you look at what they did, what happened in their last matchup. You mentioned DeAndre Hunter not around much. He was there for that one. He held KD to 10 points in the roughly 9 minutes that he was guarding him, but KD still went off for 32 on 13 of 20, for the game. So, like you said, no one's stopping KD, but at the very least, having a 6'9" versatile defender like Hunter at least allows you to, not have to double him every single time to avoid and get the ball out of his hands right away. You can still play some normal straight up defense. Not the case tonight. I do think there's some other things to exploit besides who's going to win this game. I think the points are going. I'm going to take the total at under 226.5 right now, and feel pretty good about that. I would say this. I would lean Nets for sure, as you mentioned. KD sat, so you can feel good about him coming out. But I do still think there's going to be a little bit of a slower tempo and a bit of a lot more defense played in this game. And it's not the other area I would look player props wise, to be honest, is Clint Capella. He's a guy who's had success against the Nets last time out, 13 points, but 16 boards. He's actually averaging more than 13 boards in his last three against the Nets going back to last year. So I think Clint Capella's props as well in terms of his rebounds tonight. If you wanted to take that at, I believe it was at 11.5 last time I checked. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you. But yeah, we're now up to 12.5 now on FanDuel there for Clint. So 12.5 boards still feels good for him. I think there is going to be a good amount of shots put up. But I do expect, not as many of them to fall. So those are the top two things for me in this one is rebounds for Clint Capella's. I think there's going to be some misses and the under, to be honest. And if it gets up to 230, I'll just hit it even harder, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks have kind of reverted to their shootout ways recently, going over in 6 of their last 8. But I think what I like is the fact that, Brooklyn is the best 3-point defense in the league. And that's what Atlanta's kind of depending on to get that offense going. It concerns me that Atlanta's 3-point defense is down 10% from 33 to 43% in their last 3. That they've gone 2 and 3 in their last 5 after a 7-game win streak. But that's just why I like the Nets more. That's why I'm leaning more Nets win than thinking over or under. I think, this is a situation where Vegas, as they said it, is probably going to be right on the money, and that it's going to be close to 225 when the dust settles. So, if it rises enough because people are excited about this game, I think that it's exploitable. But otherwise, I would look to tease it up, or just I'm focusing really on the Nets taking care of business against this team, which you put in the top 10 teams in terms of point differential. The Hawks are 2-7. With a really rough defensive rating, though, too. I know their defense is a lot better at home, but lately in that 5-game stretch, defensive rating is 113. That's 18th in the league, and their net rating is negative 1.2. So the defense has helped keep it under more often at home than on the road. Yeah. But to me, this is kind of a similar situation to where we saw Brooklyn go into Boston, drop 123 points, and handle business, because this is a team that they consider a rival or a threat, and that they're going to get up for that game. And since that game against Boston, they've sputtered to mediocrity at 3-3. But I love the fact that they rested a couple guys because they want this one, and that's why I just say back the championship favorite, the team that's still somehow first in the East despite everything, to just win.
Totally. And that's why I would feel comfortable with Brooklyn more so than in normal circumstances where they've been 7-point favorites or 8-point favorites, and they've got to cover that. They end up going down, see the Dallas game, see the other Hawks game. Like, they go down early and then they just crawl back and they win, by a smaller margin. But this is basically a pick 'em. So you get that money line at even money. And I would feel better about that because, like you said, the standings are only about how they end straight up. It has nothing to do do with the spread. And straight up, they are the number one team in the East, which is crazy to look at every time you go back to the standings because it feels like they're sputtering. And look, Atlanta's gone over a bunch, mostly on the road, as we mentioned. Brooklyn, as of late, in their last five, they've gone under in 5 of their last 6, and all 5 of those unders the total in that game was 220 or less, right? And that's against some teams that do play with a decent pace in there, and like a la the Bulls and the Rockets, what have you. So, I think also tonight you look at like you said, Brooklyn's defense on 3-point, very, very good. Also, what they're doing on offense is not really playing at the same pace. They're not relying on the 3-point nearly as much as last year, where they were, in the top 15 or so, top half of the league last year in terms of how the percentage of points that were coming off 3 for them. Now they're number 2 in mid range, because you've got LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Durant still hitting those shots, which seems like a bad shot according to some statisticians, but in reality, when you've got LaMarcus Aldridge and Kevin Durant shooting mid range shots, you're talking about 2 of the best mid range players in the game, and that's is slowing down the tempo a bit as well, so and leading to a few smaller scores. I think that's just another tack in the column of them getting that under tonight. So either way, a few player props like in there, like we said, definitely, and eyeing the total as it continues to rise. But make sure you stay on the lines everywhere as that continues to change up until game time. And we've got a couple other videos up for you as well today, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page, including that gift card opportunity in the player props video. So until we see you next, happy betting.